Hello everyone. I'm doing an update today on what's happening within the Border Support Network. These people have been very, very busy. I am doing this on my phone, off my laptop. So folks, refrain from sending me messages right now. Tell everyone I'm live. I'm live. So, if you missed my show yesterday, I was on a YouTube channel called Contra Cultura. So for my Spanish-speaking audience out there, if you want to hear an update on what's going on in the caravan in Spanish, check out the YouTube channel Contra Cultura. Contra Cultura is the show I just did. In fact, hold on. Let's see if I can find it real quick here. Hold on.
Que muchos de estos grupos y organizaciones ya se conocían con anterioridad.
Okay, so that's the show I just did. And you can find that Spanish show here on Contra Cultura in YouTube. And I'm just going to go ahead and toss it into the comments of this live stream. Para los seguidores hispanohablantes, este programa de Contracultura en español. Contracultura video. There you go, guys. Para los que quieran escuchar en español. So, I'm also going to be doing that tonight. I'm going to do another interview with Contracultura. So, I have a couple of shows in Spanish, and I hope to collaborate with Contracultura in the future so that I can give more updates in Spanish to my audience. So I think this is a great way of doing it. Folks, today I'm going to focus on some of the shenanigans of the Border Support Network. The Border Support Network is this group. The leadership of this group, the founders of this group, are connected to Antifa. The main founder of this group is Evan K. Duke, who has an extensive criminal record. The latest arrest on him was for the Antifa riots that occurred in Portland last year. And the people in this network have been supporting the caravans, funding the caravans, fueling the exploitation of migrants. So I want to bring you up to speed on what the people that are part of this vast network are up to. First of all, I mentioned to all of you folks that recently a judge here in the United States overturned the conviction of 4 No More Deaths activists. These 4 No More Deaths activists had been convicted of trespassing on a natural reserve. And the reason for this is because the police and the Border Patrol suspected that they were part of a smuggling operation, that they were helping migrants along the route while they were just claiming that they were providing humanitarian aid. We know that in the case of Scott Warren, the first jury did not find him guilty. They were a hung jury. And after the first trial, in which there was a conspiracy charge for Scott Warren conspiring with Pueblos Sin Fronteras director, Irineo Mujica, who delivered migrants to him in his vehicle, they dropped that conspiracy charge against Scott Warren, and he was acquitted on the harboring charges. So this is very significant, especially given the fact that the judge overturned these 4 convictions on the basis of, get this, the Religious Freedom Act. Now, for those of you who don't know, Native Americans, which were fighting against the pipeline at the Dakota Access Pipeline protest in North Dakota, made the same legal argument that they were protecting the sacred based on their own indigenous religious values, that they were protecting the water. But that legal argument, which they tried to use to set precedent for activists to use the Religious Freedom Act as part of their protest activities, failed. It failed when they tried to use it following Standing Rock, but these folks from No More Deaths have succeeded. They have now just set a legal precedent based on the fact that they have these values which are considered protected under Religious Freedoms Act, and that is going to give a lot more liberty for these folks to do what they do. So here's a latest update from their Instagram. No More Deaths people are doing what? They're hosting a Black Indigenous People of Color month-long this April. Month-long program strives to be a space of collective healing, growing, and bonding. This also is from the Instagram of No More Deaths, and in this post, they are also talking about that they're going to have no fees for the volunteers. To make this program more accessible, we are offering travel stipends and limited paid stipends for the month. You get paid to go out and quote unquote volunteer, okay, to go help No More Deaths train and do what they do in the desert. They claim they're just putting water out there for the people so that the people won't die in a place where they know there's been a lot of deaths for people didn't have water, didn't have the resources necessary to survive in the desert. But there is ample evidence that they have been collaborating and working very closely to Pueblos Sin Fronteras and its director, Irineo Mujica, who we know has been accused multiple times and for which evidence exists of smuggling, human smuggling for money. The minute that these folks are, involved in a money-making operation, I think it ceases to be about religious beliefs or deeply held values, unless you're talking about the value of the all-American dollar. And check this out, folks. Today is the 6th. You got to apply by February 7th. So, space is limited. Get your applications in there. You get a stipend for the month. This is a different kind of training because the normal trainings last longer, apparently, and this one is going to only be for a month. This is the No More Deaths page. This is where it came from. They're based out of Tucson, and they claim to provide humanitarian aid and solidarity in Southwest borderlands against militarization and for free movement of people. These border groups, like the Border Angels and Ángeles de la Frontera, which is a different group in Spanish, basically calling themselves Border Angels, same thing, different translation. They've all been accused and are known to be part of the smuggling operation, both by Father Alejandro Solalinde, who has exposed the criminal activity within these groups, as well as other pastors, such as the pastor of the Agape shelter in Tijuana, who told me that the Border Angels essentially do that work. They don't just leave water and resources in the desert, he told me. They are guides. What are guides that are bringing you into the country illegally? Smugglers. That's what they're called. That's the technical term. That's the correct term. In Mexico, they're called coyotes. Mexicans call them coyotes. In Spanish, they also call them polleros, which basically means, somebody that manages the chicks, little chickens, pollos, right? This is the March 27 through 29, 2020 training day for No More Deaths. This is post on No More Deaths. The root causes of migration. They're going to challenge the weapons trade, challenge the roots of causing migration, and resist border imperialism. What does that mean? What does resisting border imperialism mean? So what it says here is that we're supporting this training day and convergence organized by our friends at the School of America's Watch. And then they link to the School of America's Watch Instagram or Twitter or whatever this is. And it says that they're sponsoring this, School of America Watch is sponsoring this to further their goal of dismantling border imperialism and ending all forms of U.S.-led and supported violence. It says, we are working in collaboration with Stop U.S. Arms to Mexico, No More Deaths, Alliance for Global Justice, Justice for Jose Antonio Coalition, and others to facilitate a day of training and action convergence and root cause of forced migration in Tucson, Arizona, March 27th through the 29th, 2020. This weekend of training is specifically geared for friends and allies who are seeking concrete tools and information to challenge border imperialism, the weapons trade, and root causes of migration, and to support migrants forced to flee lands. This rhetoric about how people are forced to flee their homelands, as you've heard from the members of the caravan themselves in the WhatsApp chats I've been translating for you, is not the root cause of this particular migration. It may be the root of past migration. It may be the main and general cause of most migration, but it is certainly not the root cause of this caravanization of migrants. This caravanization of migrants was caused by, in large part, American-funded organizations and activists, okay? Like Border Angels, like No More Deaths, like Pueblos Sin Fronteras, Al Otro Lado, Fronteras. So, this weekend of training and action is specifically geared to give people these tools of the trade. Friday, March 27 and Sunday, March 29 are days of action, and Saturday, 28th, is a day of workshop designed to provide you with information and skills related to research, lobbying. This is a government function then, right? They're into making policy. They're into politics. This is not just a humanitarian church. And let me remind you, people from supposedly all walks of life come to this group, No More Deaths, to volunteer. As I have been told by some insiders close to the group, most of them are wealthy college students from affluent families that, want to a cool place to go and have something nice to put on their resume. A lot of these folks simply don't really know what No More Deaths is doing. But this argument of religious freedom is made by a group of people that are not affiliated to any denomination, which under the Religious Freedom Act is not required. But I find it very interesting that they're using the Religious Freedoms Act to protect the rights of people mostly funded and affiliated with the Universalist Unitarian Church. And I remember the very important role that they played at Standing Rock as well. So definitely catches my attention. They have lobbying, media art, direct action. Direct action training is what gets you arrested, okay? Community organizing and humanitarian aid that are critical to growing the resistance. School of Assassins, different names, same shame. Justice for Jose Antonio, justice for Sergio Adrian, no U.S. intervention, migrants, migration, refugees, solidarity, human rights, no ban, no wall, humanitarian aid is never a crime, water, not walls, Scott Warren, and no more deaths. Those are the hashtags. They're also holding a fundraiser. El Casino Ballroom, looks like, in Tucson with Luis Alberto Urrea. There's an event, and you can buy tickets and go to this event for their big fundraiser. $40 a piece. Here's their volunteer application for spring break. Here you go. If you don't want to go to Cancun, an alternative is the Arizona desert. You can have some cool stories to tell. And No More Deaths will be hosting this during the month of March. They need to spend a week with the Desert Aid Project, providing direct humanitarian aid. This is one of the few times we ask for less than a month. Commitment. Special operation, folks. This year, we also are waiving all volunteer fees to make this program more accessible. And you got to apply by January 24th. So this one for volunteering for that week in March is over. There's their session dates and the person that posted that picture. Once again, this is what they're working on. Now, they're also followed by the Brown Berets. This is very interesting because we saw the Brown Berets as one of the security teams that you could find out at Standing Rock. AIM, the Brown Berets, the veterans, Antifa. Guess what these folks are up to here? I so wish we could watch this without the big, I don't know why it does that. I wonder if it'll let me, no. Darn it. Let's go back. Let's see if it'll go back to where I was.
¿Cómo les va? Feliz domingo. El día de hoy estoy
This is a news clip from Uniradio Informa. It took place this past Sunday, and that would have been, Sunday, February 2nd. This was reported at 1:18 p.m. This is Ángeles Sin Fronteras, or Ángeles de la Frontera, of Mr. Tamay. And Sergio Tamay, he operates a shelter In Mexicali, he is one of the shelter operators that are believed to be part of this vast network of shelters operating there at the border of California that are housing and, we believe, moving many of these migrants over the border. I want you to hear this protest, at the end of which they will be burning a Trump piñata in effigy.
Playas de Tijuana frente al muro que divide México de Estados Unidos.
This is all of the people from this volunteer organization lined up, and they are ready to protest. Migrants
se unen para quemar una figura de Donald Trump en conmemoración al 172 aniversario del Tratado de Guadalupe.
They're talking about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is a treaty that was signed after the Mexican-American War was lost. And the treaty was signed by parties in power in Mexico and in the United States. And then payment of a certain quantity for the land that was turned over at the end of that agreement, at the end of that treaty, was made. Payment was made by the United States. A lot of people believe that that was an unfair war, that it was a war of opportunity, that the United States fought. Whatever your take on it, I want you to understand that a treaty was signed and payment was made for the territories turned over that were ceded by Mexico to the United States after the Mexican-American War. And this is what they're talking about. That's what these folks are talking about right now. These people from the border, except it's said in Spanish, Border Angels organization in Mexico. And I want you to hear what they say. I'm going to translate it for you so you can hear what they say.
Ese en el que México se dio buena parte de sus territorios a José María García Lara.
People that are working in the United States are not they're not on foreign lands. They're on land that they know, because that land was stolen from us, from our country. Our lands were stolen. This is Sergio Tamay. This is the leader of this organization. And he is one of the people that runs a shelter in Mexicali.
Por esos intereses, le recordara que hay tratados internacionales donde ellos lo hicieron en esos años para que los migrantes pudieran transitar libremente a su país.
That treaty, he claims, stated that it was signed so that Mexicans could travel back and forth in between the United States and Mexico to their lands. Okay, so Mexicans that were living on the U.S. side of the border when this when this land was ceded to the U.S. became, or had the border change, and then they would have to become citizens. They had to register their lands, and they had to become citizens of the U.S. The agreement allowed them to do that.
Es importante que eso se sepa, porque lamentablemente nadie habla de ello.
It's sad that it's important for people to know that, because sadly a lot of people don't.
Es importante que se sepa de que en 1848
people need to know that in 1884 48, excuse me, 1848,
Se firmó este tratado,
That-
donde había un convenio, donde
that treaty was signed
están ahí firmados para que nuestra comunidad mexicana pudiera cruzar a su país libremente.
that agreed to allow our Mexican people to travel
Nosotros creemos en la libertad de tránsito.
to the U.S. We believe in freedom of travel,
Entendemos esa parte, por lo tanto,
and we understand that piece of it.
nosotros nos estamos manifestando hoy este día para que se recuerde que nos robaron nuestro territorio.
That's why we're protesting today, so that it can be remembered that our lands were stolen.
Y que el presidente Trump deje de criminalizar y señalar a nuestra gente migrante.
And for Trump to stop criminalizing and signaling or pointing out our migrating people
Y solamente busca mejores oportunidades, y ya que en sus lugares
who only seek better opportunities
de origen no lo tienen.
because in their countries of origins they don't have it.
Principalmente mexicanos. Ahora estamos hablando de mexicanos para que los mexicanos
Now we're talking about Mexicans.
despierten y vean que en esos años se firmó un tratado para la libertad y libre tránsito.
We are talking to Mexicans because we want them to wake up and to realize that there was a treaty that was signed.
Así es que nosotros, la Alianza Migrante Tijuana y Ángeles
The Alianza Migrante Tijuana, the Migrant Alliance of Tijuana, and Ángeles de la Frontera,
Fronteras, estamos aquí para que se les,
which means border angels.
para que los mexicanos sepan
So we're both together here to wake the Mexican people up.
que este territorio es ocupados actualmente por más de 30 millones de mexicanos residiendo en los Estados Unidos.
Those territories in the United States that have over 30 million Mexican descendants in their country, living in their country.
No están en un territorio ajeno,
They're not on strangers' lands.
están en territorio que fue hace muchos años,
They're on territories that many years ago
territorio mexicano.
was Mexican land.
Eso es lo que nosotros queremos recordarle.
And that's what we want to remind them of.
Ahorita mismo le va a pasar la voz a mi compañero Sergio Tamay para que explique nuestro compañero de Ángeles y Fronteras más a fondo lo que nosotros estamos diciendo aquí en esta ciudad de Tijuana.
So I'm going to turn it over to Sergio Tamay so that he can give you a little bit more detail on what we're doing here in Tijuana. There's the effigy of Donald Trump.
Mexicanos, ha llegado la hora de que
Mexicans, the hour has come
le recordemos a Estados Unidos en 1848
that we need to remind the United States that in 1848,
con una guerra injusta,
with an unjust war,
con una invasión que nos dieron,
with an invasion of Mexico,
nos hicieron firmar un tratado,
they made us sign a treaty,
el Tratado de Guadalupe Hidalgo, 2 de
the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo,
febrero de 1848,
signed on 1848
por un presidente interino
signed by a president that was interim,
que no estaba autorizado
who was not authorized to sign it.
para firmar ese tratado.
That
Era
treaty.
Manuel Peña y Peña.
That was Manuel Peña y Peña.
No estaba autorizado.
He was not authorized.
Además, no fue autorizado por la Cámara de Diputados y Senadores.
It was also authorized by the Congress,
Fue
either the Senate or the House.
el magistrado de justicia y todo lo que dijeron
It was a magistrate of the Supreme Court, and what they said,
es importante que recordemos.
it's important for us to remember.
Muchos mexicanos creen que vendimos a California, Arizona,
Lots of Mexicans believe that we sold California.
Utah, Texas, Colorado.
Okay, let's go back. Hold on.
Creen que vendimos a California, Arizona,
That we sold California, Arizona,
Utah, Texas, Colorado,
Utah, Texas, Colorado,
Nuevo México y
New Mexico, and
Texas.
Texas.
Pero no es cierto.
but none of that's true.
Se puso una indemnización de 15 millones de pesos.
They paid reparation, I think, of 15 million pesos
Por todos los estragos y daños que habían cometido con esa guerra injusta.
for all of the damages and losses that they committed with that unjust war.
Y muchos creen
A lot of people believe we sold that land.
vivos, ni lo vendemos todavía.
We didn't sell it, and we're not selling it now.
Queremos recordarle a Trump que
I want to remind Trump
es hora de que negocien,
that it's time for him to negotiate,
porque vamos a empezar con la ONU,
because we are going to go to the United Nations.
cortes internacionales,
We're going to go to the international courts
para que se vuelva a negociar ese tratado
so that this Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is renegotiated
y nos devuelva nuestros territorios.
and our lands are returned to us. That's so crazy. I don't know what he's high on, but hilarious. I'm just going to show you the comments. When this was happening, there was so many laughing emojis going up and angry emojis and people telling them to get the hell out of town and stop, just, it was, somebody comes in here and he's making jokes and he's just like, hey, I'm selling tamales. So anyway, going back to Crazy Town. Let's go back to Crazy Town. They're going to sue. They're going to the United Nations. Are you listening, President Trump? You're in big, big trouble because they're going to go to the United Nations and sue you. And you're going to have to renegotiate for Colorado and Arizona and Texas and California. You forgot part about all of these different states, right? Utah.
Por lo pronto, le
But for now, he goes on,
pedimos a Trump
we ask Trump
que deje entrar a trabajar
to let the people in to work.
a todos los mexicanos,
All of the Mexicans.
no el territorio de Estados Unidos,
It's not your territory. It's not the territory of the United States.
sino a nuestro
The territory of the United States, but to our territory.
que es nuestro.
Because it's ours.
Por eso queremos que Marcelo Ebrard, que el presidente
That's why we want Marcelo Ebrard and the president
se ponga a negociar con Trump
to start negotiating with Trump
para que deje entrar a trabajar a todos los mexicanos y no esté
so he allows all of the Mexicans in to work
deportando
and stops deporting them
a todos los que estén en nuestros territorios.
and stop supporting all the people and stop deporting all the people that are in our territory. Well, now I'm getting confused. Territories. Are you talking about the U.S. or Mexico now? I don't know. I'm a little bit confused.
También queremos decirle que fue algo histórico.
We also want to say that it was historic.
Es una vergüenza que cada 13 de septiembre
It is an embarrassment that every 15th of September, which is Mexican Independence Day, for those of you who don't know what that day means,
recordamos el sacrificio
we remember the sacrifices
de los niños héroes.
of the children heroes,
La autoridad
not any authority,
se atreve a recordar que fue por la invasión de Estados Unidos
dares to remember that it was due to an invasion from the United States.
Tal parece que están callados.
It seems as if everyone's quiet.
Tal parece que las autoridades no quieren hablar de eso.
It seems like the authorities don't want to talk about that.
Por eso, Los Ángeles Sin Fronteras hemos hecho cada año
That's why every year, Angels Without Borders,
Desde el 2010 estamos haciendo estas manifestaciones.
we do a protest. We started in 2010.
En una ocasión lo hicimos en la Embajada de Estados Unidos en la Ciudad de México.
One year we did it at the Embassy of the United States in Mexico City.
Y simultáneamente en la garita de Mexicali.
And simultaneously, another protest was taking place at the border crossing in Mexicali.
Así que, compañeros mexicanos, es hora, como dicen nuestras pancartas ahí.
So, as our signs say, it is time, fellow Mexicans.
¡Levántate, mexicano!
Stand up, Mexican!
Reclamemos los territorios que nos robaron en
Let us reclaim the territories that were stolen from us
1848.
in 1848.
Y le pedimos a Andrés Manuel López Obrador,
And we asked the president of Mexico,
a nuestro presidente,
our president,
que lo hemos apoyado y lo
which we have supported
seguiremos apoyando.
and which we will continue to support.
Pero ya es hora
But it's time.
que tú dejes de burlarse.
It's time for Trump to stop mocking us.
Ya es hora de que tú entiendas que no puede estarse burlando de nosotros.
It's time for Trump to understand he cannot continue to make fun of us.
Ha obligado al gobierno de México a que la Guardia Nacional
He has forced the Mexican government to use the National Guard
trabajo sucio
to do his dirty work.
de andar deportando a nuestros hermanos centroamericanos.
And he is deporting our Central American brothers and sisters.
Y eso no lo podemos permitir ya.
And we cannot no longer put up with that.
Ya basta.
That's enough.
Ya basta, mexicanos.
That's enough, Mexicans.
Obliguemos a nuestras autoridades que hagan y defiendan
We demand that our authorities defend
nuestro terreno,
our territory,
nuestra patria.
our country.
También queremos decirles que esta fecha
We also want to tell you that on this date,
es muy importante para todos.
that date is very important to all of us.
Cuando vino la invasión,
When the invasion came,
el batallón irlandés, los
the Irish battalion came,
irlandeses, viendo que era injusta esa guerra,
seeing that this was an unjust war.
se pasaron para el lado mexicano
They crossed over to the Mexican side
y lucharon y pelearon.
and they fought alongside us.
Después fueron muertos y algunos hasta fusilados.
And then they died, and many of them were even, what's it called when they like line you up against the wall and they shoot you? Executed. Executed!
Irlandeses, extranjeros que se
Foreigners, Irishmen,
sumaron a la injusticia
who joined us because of the injustice
y defender a México.
and
Y también
defended Mexico.
murieron muchas personas.
And many people died.
Por eso, hoy vamos a hacer un minuto de silencio para recordar a todos los caídos.
So today we're going to have a moment of silence to remember all of the fallen.
Y luego vamos a quemar simbólicamente a Trump.
And then, after that, we're going to symbolically burn Trump.
Porque representa al gobierno de Estados Unidos que nos
Because he represents the government of the United States,
robó y nos sigue vendiendo y
who robbed us and continues to offend us,
nos sigue amenazando
and continues to threaten us
con muchas cosas.
with lots of things.
Así es que es hora de que todos los mexicanos nos unamos.
So now, it's time for all of the Mexicans to unite.
¿Por qué perdimos la mayor parte de nuestro territorio?
Why did we lose a large percentage of our territory?
Porque estábamos divididos.
Because we were divided.
Unos por aquí, otros por allá.
Some over here, some over there,
Traidores también hubo muchos.
and there were lots of traitors.
Así es que es hora de que todos los mexicanos nos unamos.
It's time now for all the Mexicans to come together.
Este es algo simbólico, pero vamos a unir a todos Y estoy seguro
This is just symbolic, but we're going to unite everyone, and I am sure
que en los próximos años veremos manifestaciones en toda la frontera sur.
that in the coming years we will see protests all along the southern border.
Que veremos manifestaciones en la Ciudad de México.
And we'll see protests in the city of Mexico.
Veremos manifestaciones en Guadalajara,
We will have protests in Guadalajara,
en todos los estados y
in every state of the union,
en el sur, hasta que todos nos levantemos y exijamos a Estados Unidos que nos devuelva nuestro territorio.
and we will all stand up and demand that the United States return to us our land
Que nos robaron. ¿Están
that was stolen from us.
de acuerdo, compañeros?
He's like, is everybody with me? And they're like, yeah. Nobody that's with him believes his nonsense. Oh my God, it's so funny.
Bien, vamos a pasar al minuto de silencio por todos los caídos.
Okay, here comes a moment of silence.
Por favor, las gorras todos. Cúbrase, compañeros, por favor. Dice,
You're supposed to take your hat off, so everybody's supposed to take your hat off.
un minuto
1 minute.
para recordar ahora.
Okay, I'm going to skip over that minute. I'm sorry. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but I'm just here to translate. I just want you to see how many people are there, because there's quite a lot of people. Obviously, some of them don't want their faces shown, so they're covering their faces. But there's a lot of people. See all the way down there? And this guy's like, nope, you're not going to film me. They do not want to be filmed.
A ese niño que ven ahí, que es una figura del presidente norteamericano.
That's the North American president, he says. These people are all chanting, long live Mexico now.
Ahora vamos a empezar a quemar a Trump.
Now we're going to burn Trump.
Vamos a pasar a quemar. Hay que hacer un bonito. A ver, vámonos, vámonos.
It looks like they got like a Mexican wrestling
Acabando ahí esa
piñata.
lanza, que es una piñata con la cara pegada del presidente
And then they just
norteamericano
stuck
Donald
a
Trump.
picture of Trump's face on
Cuando
it.
puedan enterrarlo,
They're going to
pues
stake it
le
into the
prenderán
ground,
fuego.
and then they're going to light
Estamos
it on fire.
exactamente frente al mundo internacional en playas de Tijuana.
They're on Playas de Tijuana.
Ahí donde se ven esos pájaros, allá en el fondo, es exactamente el lugar donde dicen siempre que aquí es donde empieza la patria, ahí empieza el territorio nacional.
This is right where the border wall is that divides Tijuana and the United States.
Igual ya saben, compañeros, quedamos. Es simbólico. Nada de groserías ni ofensas, ¿ok?
Did you hear what he just say? This is not meant to be offensive. This is just symbolic. Do you remember these same Border Support Network activists burning Trump effigy in Tapachula, Chiapas?
A tu lado, Chema.
Burn it! Burn it! People are yelling. And they're lighting the piñata on fire. One of the things I also found a little bit funny was that it didn't light. This is for all of the gringos who invaded Mexico and killed our people. Many Mexican people. Someone says, burn him.
Simbólicamente ya saben que también, de acuerdo a nuestras creencias, lo quemamos simbólicamente que se vaya al infierno el Trump. I got another letter.
Even Did you hear that person say, I got another lighter? There's like an American right there who says, I got another lighter. Do you hear that? They still can't get it to light. He's resisting the fire. They're trying to light the suit. Okay. This guy's such a clown. I don't know why the video got so bad. We're tired of you offending us. It's enough with your offenses, basically. You said we were criminals, that we were the worst. And we want to tell you that's not true. Mexicans are hardworking people. And all of those Mexicans that went to the United States to live now send us back more than $35 million. Pueblos enteros viven de lo que mandan los mexicanos allá. Whole towns live off of what the Mexicans in the United States send home. Y ahí está la prueba irrefutable que los mexicanos que van. That is irrefutable proof that the Mexicans that go to the United States Estados Unidos es pura gente trabajadora. They are hard-working people. Okay, that's enough of crazy man. Okay, so now I wanted to share this little news story. This just came out today. You can see it's from the same station, Uniradio Informa. I'm going to translate it for you. This is a shelter in Tijuana, Baja California. If you've been watching my colleague in Tijuana, one of the hardest reporters I know, Oscar El Blue Ramirez. Follow him, Border Network News. Check out what's going on. He's got updates on everything that's happening, and he's right on the border. And if you recall, after the craziness that occurred in 2016, when they didn't have enough room at the shelter at Benito Juarez, which was temporary, then they moved people over to El Barretal, and that turned crazy. They built this shelter. Remember, they kept saying they had plans to build a giant shelter for the migrants to be able to be, sheltered all together, and it has all the facilities that they need. Well, here's the shelter. It's called, it's a center for reintegration. This center is meant not only to house and shelter people, it's meant to integrate migrants back into the community, okay, economically and otherwise. It's meant to help them get back into the community, become part of the community. Other communities have done it. When I was in Tijuana, Oscar shared with me that the Haitian caravan that had come through had integrated itself, started businesses, gotten jobs, gotten housing, and become part of the community. Well, that has not been the case with these caravans. What we know is that these folks don't want to work in Mexico, don't want to stay in Mexico, don't want the help from the Mexican government, don't want to use the shelters run by the Mexican government. You know why? I told you last year, but I'll remind you, because they got rules. You know, times when you can come and go. You can't come and go at any time of day or night when you feel like it. Just like you would have rules at any shelter in any country, right? Guess what other kind of rules they got there? Well, you can't have contraband. You can't bring contraband, especially into a facility where there will be children, where there will be women. I told you last year, the pastor of the Agape shelter told you last year, the year before that. We told you since these caravans first started coming in, the real reason many of the folks in the caravan refused the government help and refused to go to the shelter was that many of them were criminal, many of them were drug addicts, and many of them did not want to follow rules. And that is why they refused to go. And that is what the mercenary activists were using. Those migrants, the ones that couldn't get into the shelter, that didn't want to go into the shelter, those were the ones that were used as activists against the Mexican authorities. That's how they're doing it in Matamoros now. That is exactly what is going on. Now I want you to hear this update about how the new shelter in Tijuana is doing. Oops, where's my sound?
Tanto de atención como en el personal que hay. Cargador para migrantes Carmen Cerdán, abierto el 11 de diciembre del 2019.
It was open in December in 2019. It's been open for a year.
Y enfrenta una crisis tanto de atención como en el personal que ahí labora. El lugar tiene
They are having a crisis for the shelter as well as for the people that work there.
capacidad de atención para 3,000 personas.
It has a capacity to house 3,000 people.
Pero hasta la fecha no ha habido día que lleguen a 100 migrantes en un local cuya red
And up to now, there hasn't been a single day. Up to this point, from the time it opened up to this point, there hasn't been a single day that shelter has even had 100 people in it. And you know how much they pay a month for this ginormous warehouse building for the migrants? You know how much they're paying for this giant warehouse building for the migrants?
renta mensual es de $20,000.
$20,000 a month. Dollars. $20,000 a month. Now, watch this government official try to justify this.
El pago de la renta es un pago muy barato
That rent, that payment for rent is very cheap
comparado con los daños económicos que hubieran causado.
compared to the economic damages that would have been caused
No cumplir con el acuerdo internacional que se
if we did not follow the international pact that we made. Did you hear that? If we had not followed the international pact that we made.
hizo. Y el acuerdo es un centro de la mejor calidad.
And that pact was that we were going to have a high quality shelter.
Sin embargo, esta semana, que han sido los días más fríos del año, los 81
Despite that, says the reporter, this time of the year when we have the coldest weather,
migrantes que se encuentran actualmente pasaron la peor noche por no
the 81 migrants that are currently in this shelter staying there right now had their worst night yet
tener cómo protegerse de las bajas temperaturas.
because they had nothing with which to protect themselves from the cold weather.
Además de que la bodega no es nada acogedora.
And on top of that, this warehouse is not very comfy.
Hoy vamos a recoger en Mexicali 5,000 cobijas que vamos
Today, we're going to go to Mexicali to pick up 5,000 blankets,
a repartir en todos los centros
which we're going to give out
para que no pase esa situación que me estás comentando.
so that we don't have the situation that you're commenting about.
Y el día de hoy llega de la Secretaría de Bienestar para hacer una inspección de lo que...
And today, the well-being, the Secretary of Well-being is going to be coming to visit the shelter to ensure that everything is,
tú estás comentando, ¿no?
you know, functioning the way it
Que
should
esté
be.
trabajando correctamente. Y también para ya preparar la apertura del centro de Mexicali.
And also, so we can prepare the opening for the center that is in Mexicali. So they have another one of these shelters in Mexicali, okay? Not a single day, folks. They're paying $20,000 a month to rent this giant warehouse that has never had 100 people a single night that it's been open since last year in December. It's been open for more than a year, and it's never had even 100 people in it. You know why? Because Mark Lane is running the Caritas shelter, because they have a new shelter that's also assisted by Mark Lane for the LGBTQIA caravan members, because they have a whole slew of shelters where you don't gotta follow no rules, where you can do what the hell you want. A whole bunch of other shelters that call the shots and are run by American activists helping the migrants thwart the authorities and flout the laws in Mexico. That's why they're not going to this. That's why they didn't go to El Barretal. That's why they're not going to this shelter.
Las cosas no quedan ahí. Este centro integrador
But that's not all, folks. This story just keeps getting better.
para migrantes ubicado en el fraccionamiento Presidentes tiene 30 empleados que deberían percibir un salario de 18,000 pesos mensuales.
The other problem is that they have 30 employees at this particular shelter that are supposed to get paid 19,000 pesos per month.
Pero hasta la fecha no les han pagado y esta
But to date, they haven't been paid.
misma semana les informaron que no hay fecha para pagar.
And just this week, they've been informed there is no date set for the future when they are to be paid. In other words, we don't got your money.
Los trabajadores que pidieron el anonimato indicaron que no se les hace
The workers who leaked this information, who did not want to be identified,
justo que se tenga una cuadrilla de militares
they think it's unfair because there is a whole section of military personnel
y 8 coordinadores
and 8 coordinators of this shelter,
provenientes de la Ciudad de México
all of whom come from Mexico City,
que sí perciben su sueldo.
all of whom do get regularly paid and have been getting regularly paid this whole time.
Que en el caso de estos últimos es de 25,000 pesos mensuales.
And those administrators receive 25,000 pesos per month,
Además de viáticos y
plus all of their expenses and
hospedaje en un conocido hotel en Otay.
and their hotel paid near Otay. That's the crossing into the United States.
Salarios, todo eso se tiene que corregir. La gente no puede
Yeah, the whole salary thing, that's got to be fixed.
trabajar gratis en eso.
People can't work for free.
Tienes absoluta razón.
You're absolutely right about that.
Y por eso hoy mismo ya viene que fue responsable de la construcción de esto para que
So today, the guy that was responsible for the construction of all of this,
se corrija cualquier problema que se tenga.
Los
so that he can correct whatever problem they have.
trabajadores revelaron que del total de los migrantes que han atendido, solo 7
The workers here have revealed that out of all of the migrants that they have serviced through this shelter since it was opened, only 7 of them
cuentan con un empleo formal.
have a formal job. Out of all of the time that this shelter has been open for more than a year, never with even 100 people in a shelter that has capacity for 3,000. Out of all the people that they have received services, and remember, this is supposed to be a shelter and it's supposed to give you the skills to integrate yourself into the Mexican community. into the population. Only 7 people have obtained jobs. 7. There's 81 people in that shelter right now, folks. You know that they average, somewhere around 50 people, and only 7 in this entire time have gotten jobs.
El resto no quiere trabajar.
You just heard it. El resto no quiere trabajar. The rest of the migrants that have received services at this shelter don't want to work. That's what the people that work at this facility have said.
Además de que les han encontrado droga.
And also, they found drugs on them.
Son por lo que les han desalojado del centro.
Which is the reason why they got kicked out of the shelter. So, a lot of people got kicked out of the shelter because they had contraband. Only 7 wanted to actually get a job.
Por esta y otras causas
For this and other reasons,
consideran que no funciona el programa.
The workers of this shelter for integration of migrants say the program is not working.
Para integrarlos a la sociedad.
The program to integrate these people into our society is failed.
Económicamente activa. En Tijuana, Alberto Elines para RCN, Uniradio Informa.
There you have it, folks. Okay? That's coming directly from the people there. I need to mention that within the WhatsApp chats, I learned that today possibly 2 more people from Honduras have died. But there was a very massive accident in which a truck illegally carrying a transport vehicle, a transport truck, a short truck, not a semi-truck, but one of those shorter, still big like a semi-truck, but one of those shorter kind, not as long as an 18-wheeler. I think they call them, what do they call them, Duke? Those, Bobby something, what was it called? Those trucks.
Short truck.
Yeah, I can't remember what they're called. What they have a specific kind of a weird name in English, but I can't remember. And I'm not a truck driver, so. But it was announced that there was this truck carrying migrants in it illegally, and it went over a cliff, and people were strewn everywhere. I think it probably took some of the migrant caravan walking on the road out as well, because there was so much debris when I looked at the pictures yesterday. So you can see there's a lot of people on the alongside the road there, and there were 80 some injuries in total. People went flying out of this truck as it went down the cliff. You could see people flying out of the truck, and then many of them were injured, and some were killed. Okay, some people died. These are the kinds of accidents when you're smuggling people that can take place. These are the kinds of tragedies that can take place. And the smuggler probably wasn't in that truck. The smuggler was just probably chilling in a vehicle on, or waiting for them to arrive at the next destination. So there was a whole bunch of firemen and ambulances and military and all sorts of people that went out there to lend support and first aid. This is just one of the many, many tragedies that take place. Thanks, Michelle. It's a 26-foot truck. So I don't know how many people you can fit in there, but I can tell you 83 people ended up having to go to the hospital. And one Guatemalan man has died. We know there's at least one death. There were children involved. This is very sad because children are involved in these smuggling operations now more than ever seen before. And these are the kinds of things that are going on. So taking a quick look into this border support network and what they are up to today, I found this post, and pretty interesting. They have this again in the Border Support Network group, and this was posted by Sarah Towle. Remember, I told you that Nate Dennison and the folks that were part of the Texas camp of activists like Brendan Tucker have been escorting the caravan, have been helping people cross the border wall in Tijuana, like Brendan Tucker, Evan Duke, Lila Sinclair, and many other activists did on January 1st of 2019, and in December, when they had a clash with, and what was it, November of 2018, when they had a clash with Border Patrol. It is what has gotten Border Patrol Network people put on a watch list. Their so-called activism, their mercenary activism, has been linked and is being investigated for working with and part of a smuggling operation. And now these folks are financing and maintaining a tent city in Matamoros, which is across the border from Brownsville, Texas. And this post was made by Sarah Towle. She's from the UK, in the Witness at the Border, which is changed from Witness Tornillo. And you know that the Tornillo camp is one of the many camps in the Border Support Network that protests detention facilities like the one at Tornillo, and contains many activists that organized the protests in Standing Rock here in 2016. She says, this hero story has proven that even just one person can make a positive difference. Joshua Rubin was outraged when Trump and company started ripping children out of the arms of their parents in spring of 2018, criminalizing asylum seekers on the U.S.-Mexico border. Resolved to do more than protest for a day, he jumped into his camper and drove to Brooklyn, New York, to a desolate corner of from Brooklyn, New York, to a desolate corner of West Texas, the site of a detention center for migrant teens. Tornillo's remote location was on purpose, he says, designed to keep the kids out of view. Josh kept vigil outside the jail for 3 months. And remember, folks, he was with this whole crew from the Tornillo, Witness Tornillo camp. I showed you that they used the bodies, the faces, the images of 2 of the children that died in detention facilities or crossing the desert, crossing the border, as toppers on their Christmas tree that they made out of plastic gallon jugs of water, which they cut into to make a Christmas tree. Then they painted them green and made some Christmas tree out of these ripped up gallons of water and topped it with the dead children. That's the kind of thing that they were doing at this Tornillo camp. When the captors, I jumped a little bit here. Tornillo's remote. What the captors covered, the chain link barbed wire top fences, he did it with song. When he did see kids, they were heavily supervised, made to walk in single file, a fist bump, their only form of permitted physical contact. A few journalists, lawyers, and elected officials got inside on tightly controlled tours. They shared the educational materials that were a joke and mental health services few, despite the American Academy of Pediatrics warning that the longer a child is in prison, the greater the risk of lifelong physiological harm. There were 1,000 teens at Tornillo when Josh Vigil began. By January of 2019, there were 3,000, some locked in for the 7 month life of the facility. Infrastructure from tents to power and water were trucked in. Sewage was trucked out. I had its own fire brigade for the town of Tornillo, had none. Josh documented it all on Facebook at Witness Tornillo, spawning a movement. In November, others joined him, locals, rabbis, congregants, politicians, celebrities. At its peak, Tornillo boasted 101 tents, 3,800 beds, and 2,000 non-FBI vetted employees. Nearly 6,000 children were held in the tent camp before Joshua Rubin and company forced its closure. No, they did not. Okay, this facility was always intended to close. The only reason this facility had to be opened is because children could not be kept in the other facilities. And the whole Flores Agreement did not permit them to be staying in detention facilities such as they are now. The massive amount of unaccompanied minors that hit us caused these facilities to have to, to open. They didn't have any other place where they legally could put them. It was temporary as they found housing or placements for these children, which can sometimes take months. They began to empty the facility, which was scheduled to close and eventually did close. They did not force the closure, neither Josh nor any of the other activists that were there. They did bring visibility to a detention facility that was maybe out of sight and out of mind of a lot of Americans, but they did not help to close it, in my opinion. And that's when the Witness movement went to Homestead, Florida, forcing the shutdown of the kids' jail there in 2019. Witness movement. And now they bear witness in Brownsville. Basically, these people are just there to be what they call legal observers. I've talked about this before. These are activists. These are not just observers. We saw similar things happen at Standing Rock. We've seen similar things happen since. They're there to be people that talk to the media, people that sell the narrative, that propagandize the narrative that the Border Support Network wants. So that's their true aim, but this is what it says their aim is. Their aim is to end migrant protection protocols, aka #Remain in Mexico, the most inhumane U.S. government policy since family separation. Support the effort, go bear witness, or help buy food supplies and pay for legal fees. Legal fees? For what? For what? Legal fees for what? Are you going to get arrested in Matamoros? I don't understand what these legal fees are for. Okay. And here is the GoFundMe. Check this out. This guy, I just showed you a video of this guy in Matamoros spinning the tale of how the people there are suffering. I showed you the truth of what's going on in that camp city that is funded by the Border Support Network, funded by groups that brought the tents there from Border Support Network leadership like Brendan Tucker. Brendan Tucker is one of the people on the watch list. Brendan Tucker is one of the people that was helping people cross the border on January 1st. And these people are now raising how much money? $40,000? $40,000? You need $40,000 for one guy? For this dude? Look at that. Check that out. Now I gotta just look at this just real quick because, oh my God. Julie gave some money. I've seen her name. She gave more money. She gave money again. Anonymous. Great way to launder money. Who else do we got on here? Anonymous. If you notice any names that jump out at you, let me know. I always check, just to see. who's in there. They're the ones that are being praised. The American organizers are being praised by the caravan goers in Matamoros because they say if it weren't for the Americans, you see all these anonymous donations, if it weren't for the Americans, they wouldn't eat. And the Mexicans bring them food they have to reheat. They have to eat leftovers. It's disgusting. The horrible situations that they are in, they're forced to endure. So many anonymous donors, so many anonymous donations. Look at that. Just one after the other. Anonymous, anonymous. You could shove a whole bunch of money in here anonymously. I thought it was really interesting when we went through some of the other groups that were funding this camp in Matamoros on the border of Brownsville, Texas, that they had a giant donation of $10,000 from the GoFundMe team. So I try to look now just to make sure that there's not some massive donation that we need to look at a little more closely. Just look at that and think about this. This has started, this 40,000, they've got 24,000 of that. And they're sharing this fundraiser, this GoFundMe, right now. And it says, we've begun our witness at the foot of the bridge of Matamoros, where refugees are living in small tents on the banks of the fateful river, the Rio Grande. We have turned our attention to the border, where a new policy known as MPP traps refugees in dangerous border towns and cities of Mexico. The U.S. is trying to obscure crimes against humanity, but as witnesses, we will not let them hide. And you won't let them go to the shelters. You won't let them go to the shelters because, you know, this whole tactic of keeping people in these tent cities has worked so beautifully for them. It worked in Tijuana. It worked so well that the Tijuana government building a giant shelter didn't solve the solution. I just showed you the story. They don't want to go to that shelter. They won't go to that shelter, but you could go to Caritas shelter every day of the week, and I bet you it is busting at the seams. Every shelter run or supported, the Border Angels shelter, every shelter supported by Mark Lane, by Bridges of Love Across Borders, by Enclave Caracol, by all of those organizations in Tijuana are bursting at the seams, while the government one, nobody wants to go to. And that's what you're going to see, because these people, the Americans, are the ones calling the shots. They're the ones calling the shots there. Okay, folks, I have got to go get ready for my upcoming interview on counterculture. I'm going to be doing another show, recording another show today, so you can watch for that tomorrow. I just wanted to give you the breakdown of what's going on in the Border Support Network, the latest that they have. Of course, Minority Humanitarian Foundation is posting in here. They're talking about the shooting of a person in ICE's custody. And Julie from Minority Humanitarian Foundation is showing the collection of donations of bags and food. And what is it all for, Julie? Tell us. Check it out, folks. What is it for? It's for that shelter. That new shelter I showed you. Contra Viento y Marea. That's what they're raising money for. Minority Humanitarian Foundation, Bridges of Love Across Borders, Al Otro Lado, Diversidad Sin Fronteras. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. All of these folks are the ones running the shelters in Tijuana. They're the ones running the shelters in Mexico that everyone wants to go to. On this side of the border, Mark Lane will get you a flight anywhere in the U.S. for free and send you to your final destination along the route. Here they are, Minority Humanitarian Foundation, sharing how they are sending these folks home. Sending folks home. These are from Mauritania and 2 men from Cameroon. And they also talk about which one is this one? Sidewalk School for Asylum Seekers. This has got to be in Matamoros. Yeah. Yep, it's in Matamoros, see? There's sidewalk school. These are, you're not getting any credit for a sidewalk school. You don't get school credit for a sidewalk school. In Mexico, the school would have to be accredited, and the teaching that goes on there would have to be accredited by Mexican authorities. These children still are not getting an education that is recognized by any government in any country. There was another post in here that I just saw where they're talking about another another shelter in Tijuana that they were helping take food and supplies to. You know, the children displays in the cages in Des Moines, where they had the audio of the children crying. Guess who that was funded by? This was all funded by Raíces. Remember that organization that all of a sudden overnight got $20 million raised by some teacher or something out in the Midwest? I can't remember. It was just really surprising. I told you all about it. And I can't find it. Folks, it was the, is this one? Is it this one? This is the Carita shelter. $170 children and families. People from the Minority Humanitarian Foundation basically supply all these different shelters that they have their hands in, that they are working with, which is right on the other side of the border from where they, continue to manage their smuggling operation. I don't know what else to call it because they're moving people into the U.S. Let's see if this is the one. This one is going to Viento y Marea. I can't find the other shelter that they had in here, but it's called the Rainbow Shelter. And, oh, this is it. So this is another post from Minority Humanitarian Foundation. Once again, check it out, stocking up for the Arcoiris Albergue. This is the shelter for the gay and LGBTQI community from the caravans. By the way, they're looking for a donation of a washer and dryer. So if you've got an extra washer and dryer, they would like one. Okay? So we've shown you how the Minority Humanitarian Foundation, which says, all they do is help people once they get out of detention facilities here in the United States. BS. I call BS. You do a lot more than that. You're supplying all the shelters. You're helping run all the shelters. And let me tell you something. There's a lot of power in that, folks. They have the power. They hold the power as long as they run those shelters. That's my update on the Border Support Network. I'm going to go and get ready for my next interview. And folks, thanks you for listening and thanks you for sharing. Hopefully I'll have a very special show for you guys tomorrow. Stay tuned.